41 past the hour, U.S. negotiators are meeting with a Russian delegation in Saudi Arabia today to try and broker a partial ceasefire a day after meeting with Ukrainian officials. A key item on today's agenda is safe shipping in the Black Sea. Last week, both Moscow and Kyiv agreed to temporarily stop strikes on energy infrastructure, but the details still need to be ironed out as strikes on both sides continue. Joining me now is New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley and Ned Price, former senior State Department and CIA official. So, Michael, during these talks, what are the details of a partial truce that could be worked out between the United States and Russia and then, the United States and Ukraine just yesterday?
Right. So Russia and Ukraine are not actually talking to each other. So they're going through the intermediary of the U.S. here. And, the idea would be first to figure out how you are going to get this pause on strikes against energy infrastructure in place. And as we've seen, there continue to be some attacks of that nature. I guess what we're waiting for here is something that's very difficult to do, not only in this context, but in any broader context, if there's going to be a settlement to the war, which is how do you monitor this? How do you monitor and enforce it? What are the surveillance systems that are going to establish what happened and who did it? And that's very complicated. And both sides are going to maneuver for advantage. The Russians are very good at this sort of thing. And maybe also delineation of what exactly constitutes these sites. People are going to want to include and exclude sites to their advantage. So even what is really a very partial pause in the fighting here can be extremely complicated to negotiate. And then they're going to try to build on that and see if they can get a renewed agreement for the Black Sea, which, as Ned can speak to, is something that the Biden administration was successfully able to broker before it fell apart. So that's actually something that's been done before and could be low-hanging fruit. But final point, even if they're able to lock these things down, you are still a long way, not only from a total combat ceasefire, including, the ground combat that is the heart of this war, but any kind of a political settlement. It's still a long way away.
Yeah, I mean, these are really the first steps in every aspect of this war that is now, plus 3 years in the making. And Ned, let's talk about that Black Sea thing, because there was an agreement. The agreement did not hold up under the Biden administration. What are the main difficulties in getting something like that ironed out, which is really beneficial to both countries as well as to the world writ large, right? And yet that is tenuous.
Well, Jose, you and Michael are both right. There was a deal under the Biden administration that was working until it stopped working because Russia really put an end to it, and Russia alone. Look, we worked around the clock together with our Ukrainian partners, together with our Turkish partners, as well as the UN that really played a pivotal role in this to get this Black Sea Grain Initiative up and running. It was important for a number of reasons. It provides revenue to Ukraine, whose economy had been battered and by now decimated because of Russia's aggression. But as you were alluding to, Ukraine is in many ways the breadbasket of the world. It provides food for the region, but through its Grain from Ukraine program, it provides food for people around the world, those who need it most in places like Sudan through World Food Program delivery. So getting this back up and running would be a good thing. But let's not just pretend that this, for some reason, just stopped working all of a sudden. It stopped working for one very specific reason, and that is the Russians went back on their agreement. They started attacking ships in the Black Sea. They made very clear that they would not abide by the terms of this agreement. And I think this really speaks to the predicament that we're now facing. Russia cannot be counted on to be true to its word. We heard some very disturbing, what I think were very disturbing comments from Steve Witkoff, the primary negotiator over the weekend, who essentially said, I trust Vladimir Putin. I find him to be a good guy. There cannot be trust in any kind of agreement that is worked out with the Russians. President Reagan knew that when he said trust but verify. This has to be built upon verification. It cannot be built upon trust and blind confidence in a country that is brutally attacking its neighbor.
Hey, Ned, just on coldly diplomatic, communications, how do you get to an agreement like the Black Sea Agreement that President Biden was successfully able to get without direct talks with one of the parties involved?
Well, it's difficult, Jose, but it's not impossible. And I think we proved that during the Biden administration. And we did that by using intermediaries. And there were two primary intermediaries in this case, the Turks, who were really instrumental to seeing this process through in the first instance, and then to the UN and the Secretary General and one of his key subordinates in New York. They conveyed messages to the Russians on behalf of the Ukrainians, on behalf of us. The Turks did so as well. So diplomacy is complex. Diplomacy is complicated. You need competence in terms of those who are engaging in it. I wish we would see more of that, Jose.
It just seems so overly complicated in order to not speak to one of the players that are fundamentally involved in this. And Michael, and I want to refer a little bit to what Ned was talking about, is that Witkoff also said that Putin prayed for his, quote, friend, Donald Trump, after last year's assassination attempt, and had an artist paint a portrait of Trump and then send it to him as a gift. Kind of unusual, or not?
Well, Jose, it's unusual in a general context. In the context of foreign leaders and President Donald Trump, it's actually not that unusual anymore. You know, think about the what I think Mr. Trump called the love letters that he got from Kim Jong-un a few years ago. Foreign leaders have come to understand that flattery will get you everywhere with this president. He really responds to basically flattery and kissing up and gestures like that. And I think it has serious policy implications. And that's just the reality of the world we live in right now. Putin's very smart and he understands that.
Michael Crowley and Ned Price, thank you both so very much. Appreciate it.